6 Signs of a Stupid Man. Knowing your own darkness is the best method for dealing with the darknesses of other people. Carl Jung. Welcome to Spiritual Wisdom, where we dive deep into the truths that challenge and transform us. In today's video, we explore 6 signs of a foolish or spiritually unconscious man not to judge, but to awaken. These insights from Jungian psychology aren't just theory, they are mirrors for self-reflection. So as you listen, ask yourself, do I see these patterns in others or in myself? True growth begins with brutal honesty and ends with personal evolution. Which of these signs surprised you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let's grow together. 1. He thinks he knows everything. He thinks he knows everything. He doesn't listen, doesn't ask, and certainly doesn't grow. To him, being right is more important than being wise. He walks through life convinced of his superiority, yet blind to the fact that his confidence is built on ignorance. Proverbs chapter 18 verse 2 says it clearly. A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinion. And that is exactly what he does, confuses speaking for knowing and noise for knowledge. This kind of man lives in a world where questioning himself is a threat. He rarely, if ever, reflects. He talks more than he listens. He confuses his opinions for facts and assumes that anyone who disagrees must be wrong. What's dangerous is not just his ignorance, it's that he doesn't know he's ignorant. Psychologists call this the Dunning-Kruger effect. The less someone knows, the more certain they become of their own brilliance. But as Carl Jung observed, thinking is difficult. That's why most people judge. This man doesn't want to think. He wants to be right. He resists correction. He feels attacked when challenged. He believes learning is for those who are behind, not realizing he's already been left behind by those who quietly keep growing. His world is small because he refuses to expand it. He doesn't ask why or what if. He only says, I already know. But what he knows is outdated, narrow, and often wrong. While he clings to his fragile sense of superiority, wise men move differently. They aren't afraid to admit they don't know something. They ask questions not to appear smart, but to truly understand. They seek feedback because they know that growth requires discomfort. To the wise, curiosity is strength, not weakness. They realize that to evolve, they must first let go of the illusion of perfection. Carl Jung taught that what we refuse to face in ourselves becomes our fate. A man who denies his own ignorance cannot change. His pride becomes his prison. He may appear confident on the surface, but inside, he is stuck, unable to improve, unable to connect, and ultimately, unable to fulfill his potential. Real intelligence is not about how much you know. It's about how open you are to knowing more. In a modern context, picture 2 men introduced to a new system at work. One immediately claims, "This is useless. I know a better way," and refuses training. The other says, "I'm not familiar with this. Can you help me understand it better?" Months pass. The first man is frustrated, unproductive, blaming others. The second man is thriving, adapting, leading. What separated them was not intelligence, but attitude. The man who thinks he knows everything doesn't fail because he's stupid. He fails because he's unteachable. And that's the most dangerous kind of ignorance, the kind that hides behind arrogance. True wisdom begins with the courage to admit you still have something to learn. Have you ever acted like you knew it all, only to realize later you were wrong? If so, comment, "I've been there." Let's grow together by staying curious, asking questions, and choosing wisdom over pride. Join the spiritual wisdom journey, where learning never stops. 2. He never takes responsibility. A man who never takes responsibility is not just avoiding failure, he's avoiding himself. He blames the world, bad luck, other people, anyone but himself. His ego is too fragile to admit fault, so he builds a life of excuses. He shields himself behind blame because the alternative, facing his own reflection, is too painful. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls." And that's exactly what's happening here. He refuses to look inward because the truth threatens his self-image. But in doing so, he also refuses to grow. By always playing the victim, he surrenders his power. He stays stuck, not because life holds him there, but because he refuses to accept that he has the power to move. Spiritual wisdom teaches that responsibility is not shame, it's strength. A wise man does not fear the words, "I was wrong." In fact, he welcomes them. He knows that admitting a mistake is the first step to becoming wiser, not weaker. He doesn't shrink in the face of failure. He stands up, reflects, and chooses to evolve. Taking ownership doesn't make him smaller. It expands his soul. But the foolish man can't see this. He thinks blame protects him. He thinks excuses are armor. But in truth, they are chains. And every time he points outward, he tightens those chains around his own spirit. Look closely, and you'll see this pattern everywhere. A man loses a job and says the system was against him. A relationship ends, and he says she was too emotional, too demanding. He never once asks, "What did I bring into this? What could I have done differently?" And because he never asks, he never learns. He keeps repeating the same mistakes under new disguises, circling the same pain, but never entering it, never healing it. Real strength begins the moment you say, "This is mine." Not because you want to carry guilt, but because you want to claim power. The man who says, "Yes, I failed, but I can do better," is already on the path to transformation. Spiritual wisdom isn't about being perfect. It's about being accountable. It's about facing the truth, no matter how uncomfortable, and choosing growth over ego. Responsibility is not a punishment. It is the portal to freedom. The man who owns his story, even the messy parts, becomes someone others respect. He becomes grounded. He becomes real. And he becomes free, not because life is easier, but because he is stronger. Do you believe that true strength begins with responsibility? If you do, declare it boldly in the comments. "I take ownership of my life. No more excuses." Let's grow wiser, stronger, and more accountable together. 3. He can't control his emotions. He cannot control his emotions. He lashes out in anger, breaks down when things don't go his way, and sabotages his own progress without realizing it. He acts on impulse, convinced that emotional outbursts make him powerful. But in truth, they expose his deepest weakness. A man who is constantly reactive is not strong. He is unstable. His emotions run the show, and his life reflects that chaos. He thinks he's being real, raw, and honest. But in reality, he's just being ruled by forces he hasn't yet understood. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." A man like this hasn't done the inner work. He doesn't know what he's really feeling. He can't sit still long enough to reflect. So when discomfort rises, he explodes. When things don't go his way, he either blames others or spirals into self-pity. This is not masculinity. It's immaturity dressed in ego. Such a man is also easy to manipulate. People learn his triggers and push his buttons to control him. A single insult can throw him off course for days. A minor disagreement feels like a personal attack. Instead of using emotions as a tool for awareness, he becomes a puppet pulled by every string of irritation, jealousy, or shame. He has no spiritual center, no inner ground to return to. His identity is so fragile that he interprets feedback as rejection and silence as betrayal. Proverbs 29, verse 11 says, "A fool gives full vent to his anger, but a wise man keeps himself under control." Wisdom isn't the absence of feeling. It's the ability to respond without losing yourself. The wise man still feels deeply, but he channels those emotions into growth, understanding, and presence. He knows when to pause. He's aware of what he's projecting. He observes his inner storms without becoming them. That's the power of spiritual awakening when emotion becomes information, not destruction. An awakened man is not numb. He is simply no longer controlled by what he feels in the moment. He learns to ask, where is this emotion coming from? What wound is being touched? How can I rise above this reaction and move with clarity? He turns pain into purpose and frustration into fuel. He breathes through the triggers, listens to the silence inside him, and acts from intention, not impulse. That's what makes him steady. That's what makes him strong. Emotional control, at its highest level, is not about suppression. It's about mastery. The spiritually awakened man doesn't yell to be heard. He doesn't crumble to gain sympathy. He walks with quiet power, shaped by awareness and grounded in truth. His emotions no longer erupt. They speak, and he listens. If you're ready to rise above emotional chaos and grow into your higher self, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. I choose calm over chaos. Let's walk this path of wisdom together. 4. He surrounds himself with fools. He surrounds himself with fools, people who complain, stay lazy, and agree with everything he says, not out of wisdom, but out of fear. These yes men protect his ego, but destroy his potential. He avoids those who challenge him because their strength exposes his weakness. He feels inadequate in their presence, so he distances himself. But in doing so, he trades growth for comfort and eventually becomes stagnant. Carl Jung taught that the parts of ourselves we refuse to face will rule us in secret. A man who fears accountability has already surrendered to his own limitations. Goethe once said, "Tell me who you spend time with, and I will tell you who you are." It's not just a quote, it's a mirror. If the people around you make excuses, never take responsibility, and mock ambition, it won't matter how capable you are, you'll become like them. Environment is destiny. This man never levels up because no one in his life expects him to. He chooses comfort over challenge, and in doing so, he sabotages himself. Wisdom demands pressure, but he fears that pressure because it threatens the fragile image he clings to. Think of two men who once walked the same path. One surrounds himself with visionaries, builders, truth-tellers, people who live intentionally and with purpose. They push him to grow. They correct him when he slips. They don't flatter him, they sharpen him. The other man stays in the same dead-end circle. His friends complain, scroll, drink, and gossip. No one dreams. No one reads. No one risks. 10 years later, their lives are the result of their choices. One has evolved. The other has repeated the same year 10 times and called it a decade. That's what happens when you choose comfort over character. Carl Jung believed that transformation begins with truth. But this man resists the truth. He confuses kindness with flattery, strength with aggression, and growth with pain. He tells himself he's loyal for staying in the same crowd, but really, he's afraid. Afraid of change, afraid of being seen, afraid of being left behind. And so, he lets mediocrity become his home. He doesn't fail because of bad luck. He fails because he keeps his life surrounded by people who never challenge him to rise. Meanwhile, wise men do the opposite. They seek mentors. They crave truth. They want accountability. They look for people who are smarter, stronger, more grounded. They ask hard questions. They accept hard answers. They understand that growth demands discomfort, and that success is often born in silence, sweat, and self-confrontation. The people they surround themselves with reflect their vision, not their fear. This is the real difference between a fool and a man of wisdom. One hides behind false friends. The other walks with those who push him forward. If this message spoke to your spirit, say it with faith. I am choosing wisdom. I will surround myself with growth, not foolishness. And if you're ready to rise higher, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. I choose wise company so we can grow stronger together. 5. He chases pleasure instead of discipline. A man who constantly chases pleasure over discipline is not just avoiding discomfort, he is abandoning his potential. Carl Jung said, "The battle is between the higher self and the lower self." That battle plays out every day, often in silence. The foolish man doesn't recognize the war. He's too busy choosing comfort, entertainment, and instant dopamine over long-term growth. His life becomes a cycle of temporary highs and long-term emptiness. Scrolling through social media instead of building a skill. Eating for pleasure instead of health. Sleeping in instead of rising early for purpose. This is not just procrastination, it's spiritual decay. The spiritually wise man knows that pleasure is seductive, but fleeting. Discipline, though harder, builds something lasting. The fool asks, "What feels good now?" The wise man asks, "What shapes my future?" One chooses quick reward, the other, quiet resilience. One chooses numbness, the other chooses transformation. Discipline is the architecture of greatness. It may not deliver instant joy, but it gives you peace that pleasure can't reach. Legacy isn't built on cravings. It's built on choices that cost you something. Pleasure is not evil. It becomes dangerous when it becomes your God. When you live only for the next hit of comfort, you trade your vision for short-term relief. You trade clarity for confusion. You trade power for passivity. A man ruled by pleasure will always be a slave to the moment. His habits become chains. His excuses multiply. His ambition fades. Over time, his soul shrinks in silence. But discipline, though uncomfortable, expands the soul. It's not just about routine, it's about reverence for your future self. A man who practices discipline respects the man he could become. He shows up on the days he doesn't feel like it. He keeps his word when no one is watching. He builds rituals that anchor his mind and spirit. And through this, he becomes dangerous, not to others, but to every limiting belief that once controlled him. Spiritual wisdom teaches us that life isn't about what feels good, it's about what does good. Pleasure comforts the moment. Discipline transforms the man. And the man who chooses the harder path today walks with power tomorrow. So if you keep wondering why you feel stuck, anxious, unfulfilled, it's time to stop escaping and start engaging. Because what you avoid is often the key to who you're meant to become. If this message has opened your eyes today, leave a comment of commitment. I choose discipline over distraction. I am building the life God destined for me. 6. He repeats the same mistakes. He keeps making the same poor decisions, walking into the same walls, and expecting the door to magically appear. Time after time, he fails in relationships, finances, habits, but instead of pausing to ask why, he blames the world. He doesn't change because he doesn't reflect. He doesn't reflect because he's too proud to admit he's wrong. And so, the cycle continues. Carl Jung called this unconscious repetition compulsion a deep psychological pattern where a person blindly reenacts past failures without ever learning from them. This isn't just stubbornness, it's a sign of spiritual blindness. While a man in spiritual awakening embraces each failure as a mirror for growth, the foolish man curses the mirror and walks away unchanged. Albert Einstein captured it perfectly. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. But he doesn't hear that wisdom. He only hears himself, because he also talks more than he listens. He fills every silence with his noise. He interrupts. He lectures. He assumes. He speaks not to connect, but to dominate. His ego shouts so loudly that the voices of others can't get through. And beneath that noise is fear. The fear of being seen, questioned, or proven wrong. This is not confidence. It's emotional immaturity disguised as self-assurance. True emotional intelligence begins with silence. Listening is not weakness, it's presence. A man who listens is a man who learns. He absorbs new truths. He grows deeper. He sees beyond himself. In spiritual wisdom, the ability to listen is sacred. It reflects humility, curiosity, and strength. But the fool talks himself in circles, confusing movement for progress. He hears no one, and so he becomes no one. There is no evolution without awareness, no awareness without reflection, and no reflection without listening. A wise man may stumble, but he does not fall into the same pit twice. He pays attention. He adjusts. He transforms. The fool, however, clings to patterns that no longer serve him, not because he loves them, but because he fears what change might demand of him. And until that fear is faced, no amount of knowledge, advice, or warning will break the loop. Only awakening will. To affirm your growth and self-awareness, declare your breakthrough. Comment below, I choose to grow. To mark your decision to stop repeating old mistakes and to inspire others to do the same. Remember, true wisdom lies in self-awareness and the willingness to grow. If any of these signs made you reflect, take it as a gift, a chance to evolve beyond old patterns and become the person you're meant to be. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Hit the notification bell so you never miss out on future insights that can transform your life. Until next time, stay conscious, stay curious, and keep walking the path of growth. how nothing and nobody will affect your energy ever again. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Carl Jung. Have you ever wondered why certain people or situations drain your energy while others leave you untouched? In today's world, protecting your energy isn't just a spiritual luxury, it's a necessity. This video will reveal the wisdom behind emotional sovereignty, helping you stop reacting and start rising above the noise. If you're ready to reclaim your peace and power, you're in the right place. Let us know in the comments. Have you ever experienced a moment where you realized your energy was being affected by someone else? Share your experience below. We'd love to hear your story. 1. Emotional reactions are mirrors of inner wounds. People don't react to reality. They react to what reality brings up inside them. Every emotional trigger is not a sign that the world is cruel, but that there's still something inside us that hasn't been healed. The moment you feel hurt, offended, rejected, or angry, it's rarely about the person in front of you. It's about the part of you that was already vulnerable long before they said a word. As Carl Jung wisely said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Most people are not living. They're simply reacting to their unresolved emotions, thinking it's the world's fault, when it's actually their own unconscious wounds playing out again and again. When someone criticizes you, if it shakes your entire mood, that's not about them. That's about you. If someone says you're not good enough and it ruins your day, it's not because they hold some great truth. It's because a part of you fears they might be right. And until you shine a light on that belief, you will keep giving your power away to those who simply mirror back your hidden pain. This is the great spiritual wisdom behind emotional mastery. You are not reacting to life itself. You're reacting to your personal interpretation of life. Your mind attaches meaning to everything it experiences. If you don't question that meaning, you'll be a slave to it. You may not notice it, but some people live in constant fight or flight, not because danger is everywhere, but because their inner child still feels unsafe. A single glance, a tone of voice, or even a delay in a text message can spiral them into anxiety. That's not life being harsh. That's trauma being unhealed. If you've ever panicked because someone took too long to reply, it wasn't the silence that hurt. It was the abandonment wound it touched. And so, every emotional trigger becomes a flashlight pointing at the places within you that are still raw. These are not curses. They are invitations, your soul's way of saying, pay attention here. Carl Jung's entire body of work reminds us that the outer world is a reflection of our inner world. The more chaos you feel inside, the more you'll see conflict outside. The more peace you cultivate within, the less anything outside can shake you. That's why the strongest people are often the calmest. They've stopped trying to control the world. They've stopped hoping people will validate them. Instead, they've turned inward. They've done the work. They've faced their shame, their fear, their childhood stories, and rewritten the script. In our fast-moving world, it's easy to blame others when we feel bad. But blame is a form of self-abandonment. Every time you say, "They made me feel this way," you hand your power over. But when you say, "Why did that affect me so deeply?" you take the first step towards spiritual awakening. The people who trigger you the most are often the ones who are unknowingly helping you find your deepest truth. Life isn't punishing you. It's exposing you to yourself. This is the true path of emotional freedom. Not numbing your feelings, not pretending nothing affects you, but learning to sit with what arises without being swallowed by it. Learning to hold your pain like a teacher, not a threat. Because in the end, nothing and nobody can affect your energy unless it finds something inside you that lets it in. Have you ever paused to reflect on what your emotional reactions are really trying to tell you? If you've recognized a hidden wound beneath a strong reaction, share your insight in the comments so we can grow together. If you're just beginning to explore this, comment, "I'm ready to heal," and join us on this path of inner awareness. 2. The illusion of control keeps you powerless. Most of what we believe we control our choices, our habits, our emotional reactions is actually shaped by unconscious conditioning. From a young age, our minds are programmed by family expectations, societal pressures, emotional wounds, and limiting beliefs. What feels like free will is often just a pattern repeating itself. For example, if you were taught that love must be earned through perfection, you might now obsess over details, overwork yourself, or fear failure not because you choose to, but because an old wound is still running the show. This is why Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Understanding this brings a powerful kind of freedom. You don't need to control every emotion, every outcome, or every person. Instead, you need to become aware of what's happening inside you. Awareness is the key. When you pause and witness your reactions instead of instantly obeying them, you create space to choose differently, space to align with your truth, space to rise above the automatic. That's where spiritual wisdom begins, not in fighting the world, but in understanding yourself. Real power doesn't come from controlling the external world. It comes from flowing with it. Think of trying to control life like trying to control a river with your bare hands. It's exhausting, pointless, and only leaves you more anxious. But if you learn to float with the current, you conserve your energy, and suddenly, life becomes a dance, not a battle. This isn't weakness. It's a deep form of strength, one that refuses to be shaken by outcomes, opinions, or the chaos of the world. When you insist on controlling everything, your image, your relationships, your future, you disconnect from your inner power. You live in constant anxiety, always chasing certainty and approval. But here's the truth. Control is an illusion, and chasing it leads to emotional burnout. You lose touch with your creativity, your intuition, your joy. You end up managing life instead of living it. Letting go doesn't mean giving up. It means trusting your alignment more than your fear. There's a woman who spent years trying to hold her life together. She managed every detail: her diet, her schedule, her career, even her spiritual practices. Yet she still felt empty. One day, completely exhausted, she let go, not out of defeat, but clarity. She stopped clenching. She stopped trying to be perfect. She chose to just be present. And slowly, her energy shifted. People noticed her calm. Her face softened. Her laughter returned. That's the irony. Once she released the need to control, she stepped into a power that had been inside her all along. Letting go is the beginning of transformation. It is not passive. It is not weak. It is the return to presence, to clarity, to truth. When you let go of control, you reclaim your soul's authority. You remember who you are beneath the noise. And in that space, nothing outside of you, no person, no situation, no storm, can ever steal your peace again. That is the quiet, unshakable strength that spiritual wisdom leads you to. If you're ready to release the illusion of control and reconnect with your true inner power, comment below. I surrender to flow. Let's walk this path of freedom together. 3. Your identity is a construct that limits you. Most people live inside invisible cages made of identity. They say, "I'm this kind of person," as if that statement defines the full scope of their being. These identity labels your job, your role in society, your beliefs, your past form a psychological structure that quietly restricts your energy. You start to believe you are only what others have told you to be. But this rigid self-concept doesn't serve your expansion. It stifles it. It interrupts the natural flow of your growth and keeps your spirit boxed in. The deeper truth is, your identity is not fixed. It's a construct. And the moment you recognize this, you begin to reclaim your power. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But to do that, you must first let go of who you think you are. You must release the story that your identity is permanent. Because the roles you play and the beliefs you carry often come from survival, not truth. You adapted. You performed. You fit in. But now, those patterns keep you small. They block the very energy that wants to awaken within you. Spiritual awakening is not about adding more. It's about letting go. The more you detach from the false self, the more your real self begins to emerge. Think of your energy as a river. Your identity, if too rigid, becomes a dam. It blocks your creative flow. It limits your adaptability. But when you dissolve those boundaries, when you stop clinging to fixed roles, you allow the water to run freely. You begin to express yourself with clarity, power, and authenticity. And it's in this state that you truly come alive. The world starts responding to your presence differently, not because you've changed your mask, but because you've dropped it. The most dangerous phrase in personal growth is, "That's just how I am." It's a defense mechanism, not a truth. It protects the ego, but it imprisons the soul. Every time you use that phrase, you close the door on possibility. You silence the invitation to evolve. But when you say, "Maybe I'm more than this," you open to transformation. You invite spiritual wisdom into your life. You allow the deeper self, not the wounded one, not the performing one, but the real one, to take the lead. This is why spiritual awakening is a process of remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. It's not a rejection of identity. It's a liberation from its limits. The moment you stop needing to be someone in particular is the moment you become everything you were meant to be. And in that space, nothing and no one can control your energy. Because your power no longer comes from holding on, it comes from letting go. Are you ready to break free from the labels that limit your soul? If so, comment below. I release who I was to affirm your commitment to living with freedom, authenticity, and expansion. 4. Reclaiming personal power requires boundary and clarity. You lose energy every time you say yes out of fear, every time you seek validation, shrink yourself to fit someone else's comfort, or try to manage how others see you. This kind of self-abandonment is subtle, but it's the root cause of burnout that has nothing to do with physical exhaustion and everything to do with energetic leakage. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But you cannot become that if you're constantly performing for other people's approval. The more you shapeshift for acceptance, the more you lose touch with your authentic self. Power is not loud or forceful. It's preserved in silence, in boundaries, in the ability to walk away without guilt, and in the courage to not explain yourself. People often think boundaries push people away, but in truth, boundaries are what keep your energy intact. They are an act of spiritual wisdom. When you don't draw the line, others will, and they won't do it with your well-being in mind. Look at your digital life. Every post seeking affirmation, every scroll that leaves you comparing, every comment you write just to be seen, all of it drains you. You don't need to prove your worth to the world when you remember who you are. When you act from self-trust instead of insecurity, you stop leaking energy. You begin to stand in stillness, not because you are cold or detached, but because you no longer seek to be understood by people committed to misunderstanding you. Sarah, a woman in her early 30s, was always tired, but not from work. Her days were spent managing emotions, keeping others comfortable, and constantly over-explaining her intentions. She was afraid to say no, afraid of being disliked, afraid of not being seen as nice. Her turning point came when she read Carl Jung's ideas on individuation, the path to becoming whole. She realized her exhaustion was not physical, but emotional and energetic. She wasn't tired of life. She was tired of betraying herself. She began saying no without apology, stepping back from draining conversations and turning off her phone after a certain hour. The more she honored her own energy, the more powerful she became. Her life didn't fall apart. It realigned. And she stopped confusing being agreeable with being loving. You must understand that when you live for approval, you live in fear. And fear will always have you leaking power through people-pleasing, over-explaining, staying quiet when you want to speak, or speaking when silence is your truth. True clarity doesn't explain. It simply is. When you no longer need others to understand, you've already stepped into a higher vibration. This is the beginning of spiritual awakening, not a mystical event, but the moment you stop abandoning yourself. Carl Jung reminded us that the unconscious drives our lives until we make it conscious. If you've been saying yes to everything and everyone just to be liked, ask yourself, what part of me still believes that being loved means being small? Reclaiming your energy is not about becoming harder. It's about becoming more honest. Power doesn't come from being liked. It comes from being in alignment. And when you live in alignment, nothing and nobody can shake your peace. If this message resonates with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's grow together by honoring our boundaries and reclaiming the energy that truly belongs to us. 5. Sovereignty is radical self-ownership. Sovereignty means living from your truth, not bending to the expectations of others or waiting for outside approval to feel whole. It's the radical act of reclaiming yourself in a world that constantly demands your attention, energy, and obedience. When you stop chasing validation and start listening to your inner knowing, something shifts. Your nervous system calms, your energy strengthens, and your presence becomes undeniable. You are no longer scattered, seeking, or apologizing for who you are. You begin to live with intention, from a center that cannot be touched by anyone else's mood or opinion. Spiritual wisdom reminds us that your gut is not just a feeling. It's an ancient voice of inner intelligence. Every time you override it to be liked, you dim your power. But when you honor it, even when it tells you to walk away, speak up, or disappoint others, you step deeper into alignment. Sovereignty is built by saying no to what drains you and yes to what feeds you, even if it's inconvenient, even if it's lonely at first. The truth is, inner peace often begins with outer disruption. When you reclaim your attention, you reclaim your life. Every moment you spend numbing, scrolling, over-explaining, or defending yourself is a moment you abandon your essence. But when you become aware, truly aware of where your focus goes, you realize how much power you've been giving away. You learn to pause before responding. You stop leaking energy to situations that do not deserve your spirit. The more you protect your time and presence, the more magnetic and grounded you become. People stop trying to test your boundaries because your energy speaks louder than your words. Stillness is not weakness. It is where your power regenerates. Nature teaches this. The moon does not rush through its phases. The trees don't hustle to grow. They remain in rhythm, rooted, receptive, and they thrive. When you return to stillness, you reconnect with your natural rhythm, your spiritual strength. You remember who you are beyond the noise. You begin to feel the difference between movement and momentum, between urgency and clarity. This is where sovereignty deepens not in force, but in presence. And with presence comes unshakable clarity. You are no longer driven by the need to fix, chase, or control. You don't collapse when you're ignored, and you don't inflate when you're praised. You simply witness, and in that witnessing, you find peace. Not a peace that avoids conflict, but one that no longer needs to argue, prove, or please. You don't just guard your energy, you embody it, and it becomes untouchable. Spiritual wisdom shows us that sovereignty is not ego. It's devotion to the truth within. It's taking radical responsibility for how you feel, what you allow, and who you become. And the more you own your inner world, the less the outer world can shake you. Nothing and nobody will affect your energy ever again because your power no longer lives in the hands of others. It lives in you. If you're ready to reclaim your energy and live from your truth, comment, "I choose sovereignty," below. Your voice matters. Let us know how this message resonates. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to support this journey of self-ownership. 6. Mental rewiring is the path to lasting change. Neuroplasticity is the scientific term for your brain's ability to change and adapt, and it is the foundation for true personal transformation. When you repeat a thought, an emotion, or an action, you reinforce a neural pathway. Over time, this becomes automatic. It's why you keep reacting the same way, feeling the same emotions, or thinking the same self-defeating thoughts. But just as these patterns were formed, they can be reshaped. Your brain is not fixed. It is alive, dynamic, and constantly rewiring itself based on what you consistently do, say, and believe. This is not just neuroscience, it's spiritual awakening in action. The realization that your inner world creates your outer experience. Every small choice you make becomes a vote for the kind of person you're becoming. The breath you take when you're anxious instead of reacting, that's a new neural path. The moment you shift your language from "I can't" to "I'm learning," that's transformation in real time. The mental image you hold before sleep, the words you whisper to yourself when no one else is listening, the way you journal through your confusion instead of avoiding it. These are not trivial habits. They are acts of spiritual power. They are the tools with which you are sculpting your own consciousness. Breathwork calms the nervous system and teaches your body it is safe. Visualization activates the same regions in your brain as real experience, training you to embody the future before it arrives. Repetition of new, empowering language rewrites the old inner scripts that told you you were not enough. Journaling gives shape to the intangible, giving clarity to the chaos. And sleep, often overlooked, is the sacred space where your brain consolidates everything you've practiced during the day. These practices may seem small, but they build momentum, and momentum becomes identity. You are not just trying to think more positively. You are forging a new way of being. Each intentional act is a signal to the universe. I am not my past. I am not my trauma. I am not my conditioning. I am consciousness, choosing to evolve. This is what spiritual awakening looks like, not a lightning bolt, but a gentle, repeated return to truth. And truth always begins within. When you take responsibility for the contents of your own mind, the world outside begins to shift in reflection. Not because life is suddenly easier, but because you've become unshakable. Transformation is not dramatic. It's consistent. It's in the rewiring that happens when no one's watching. The moment you pause before reacting. The breath you take when you feel triggered. The softness you offer yourself after a setback. This is how you reprogram the system, not through force, but through gentle, sacred repetition. Each moment is an invitation to begin again. And each time you accept that invitation, you step further into the power of who you really are. If you're still here and ready to rewire your mind for lasting change, comment, "I'm rewiring" below. Your feedback keeps this journey alive and helps us grow together. 7. Energy mastery is daily strategy. Energy is your most sacred currency. Just like money, it must be tracked, protected, and restored daily. When you stop managing your energy with intention, you allow life to manage it for you, often chaotically. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And that includes your energy. Every unconscious thought, every emotional trigger, and every unexamined habit drains a part of you. That's why true energy mastery is not about doing more. It's about doing what aligns when your energy supports it and eliminating what doesn't. One of the most overlooked keys to energy mastery is timing. Most people try to push through tasks at the wrong hours, wasting their sharpest focus on distractions and saving meaningful work for when they're already mentally fatigued. Learn to map your energy. When do you feel most alive? Most clear? Use those hours for high-energy tasks. When your energy dips, use that time for rest or routines that refuel you. This is not laziness. This is strategy. You are not a machine. You are an energetic being, and respecting your rhythms is spiritual wisdom in motion. Another critical aspect is protecting your energy from what Jung might call the shadow, those hidden forces that influence you without your awareness. Energy thieves don't always look obvious. They're not just negative people or loud environments. Sometimes they show up as constant phone notifications, unresolved guilt, or relationships that subtly undermine your self-worth. These are the things you must learn to say no to, not from a place of fear, but from a place of clarity. If it drains you, distracts you, or dims your light, it's too expensive. Not everything deserves access to your nervous system. I once knew someone who began each day with purpose and enthusiasm, but by lunchtime, she was scattered, anxious, and fatigued. The reason wasn't complex. Every morning, the first thing she did was scroll through her phone news, messages, social media, and by the time she stood up to begin her day, she was already emotionally fragmented. Her energy was hijacked before she even left the bed. It wasn't until she created a sacred, tech-free first hour with meditation, journaling, and silence that everything shifted. Her clarity returned, her focus improved, and most importantly, she began to feel powerful again. Sustainable energy doesn't come from random bursts of motivation. It comes from systems that nourish your body through sleep, food, and movement. Systems that restore your spirit through breath work, stillness, or prayer. And systems that protect your peace through boundaries, discernment, and aligned choices. You are not weak because you feel tired. You are drained because your energy is being invested in too many directions without return. To master your energy is to reclaim your power. Carl Jung taught that the most meaningful transformation begins within. And when you begin to bring consciousness to how your energy is created, spent, and protected, you stop living reactively and start living deliberately. Nothing and nobody can shake someone who knows where their energy belongs. And that is the essence of spiritual awakening, to finally live as the guardian of your own light. Stay connected to your highest energy and purpose by subscribing to our channel. Here, we share practical insights and soulful strategies to help you master your energy every single day. Remember, your energy is sacred. Protect it, align it, and watch your life transform. 8. The mirror of perception shapes reality. The world, in its raw essence, is neutral. It doesn't favor or punish. It simply reflects. But your perception gives it meaning, painting every moment with the colors of your inner world. When your mental mirror is clouded by past wounds, fear, or limiting beliefs, even the most ordinary experiences feel heavy, threatening, or unfair. What you see outside is not the truth itself, but a distorted reflection of what's unresolved within. Carl Jung spoke to this when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." The shadows you haven't yet faced will color your reality and convince you that life is attacking you when it's actually revealing you. If your mirror is cracked with old betrayals or fogged by self-doubt, your energy will constantly react to illusion rather than truth. A friend's silence feels like abandonment. A setback feels like personal failure. A stranger's opinion shakes your entire identity. Not because these things are truly harmful, but because they touch a belief still alive inside you. Spiritual wisdom teaches that the external world is a screen, and the projector is within. You are not at the mercy of what you see. You are the one assigning it meaning. And this is where transformation begins. Cleaning the mirror starts with honest self-inquiry. When you're triggered, do you pause and ask yourself, what story am I telling myself right now? This one question can begin to dissolve layers of illusion. Reframing is another powerful practice. Instead of thinking, they don't respect me, you might consider, they may be overwhelmed or unaware. In that shift, your energy changes. You move from reaction to reflection, from defense to discernment, from being drained to being centered. The world doesn't have to change, your perception does. In everyday life, this becomes a sacred discipline. You're stuck in traffic, and instead of fuming, you recognize an opportunity to breathe, to listen to your thoughts, to return to yourself. Someone criticizes you, and instead of collapsing into self-doubt, you examine whether their words align with your truth or reflect their own unhealed pain. These small moments become portals into spiritual awakening. Your emotional freedom lies not in changing the world, but in refining the lens through which you see it. When the mirror is clear, your energy becomes stable, luminous, and sovereign. People sense it. Situations shift in response to your inner peace. You're no longer thrown by every wave because you've become the stillness beneath it. Spiritual wisdom reminds you that the more clarity you bring to your perception, the more gracefully you move through life. Reactions soften. Understanding deepens. You begin to respond rather than resist, to witness rather than absorb, to love without losing yourself. And slowly, almost quietly, nothing and nobody can affect your energy unless you give them permission. If this message helped you see the power of your own perception, leave a comment below. I choose to see with clarity. I'm ready to clean my mirror. Your words inspire others on this journey. 9. Waking up from collective illusion. Society conditions you from a young age to follow rules, fit in, and not question the systems around you. You're taught to consume, obey, and stay busy, so busy that you forget the quiet power resting inside of you. But the truth is, the moment you start asking why, something begins to shift. You step outside the trance. You stop accepting what you've been told as absolute truth. You begin to see how much of your thinking wasn't yours to begin with. That's the start of spiritual awakening, not a dramatic external change, but a subtle internal revolution. When you begin to question your beliefs, your habits, your identity, you're not losing your mind, you're reclaiming it. Carl Jung once said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. But you, in your quiet questioning, are doing the opposite. You're beginning to look inward. You're noticing when you follow the crowd just to feel accepted. You're becoming aware of how fear has dictated your choices. You're no longer content with living life asleep. This awareness is your power. You may feel resistance not only from the world, but from within. Part of you may cling to the comfort of old patterns. But awakening demands discomfort. It forces you to confront the lies you've believed and the masks you've worn. It doesn't ask for perfection. It asks for honesty. And as you get honest with yourself, you'll find that much of what you feared was simply a reflection of unexamined beliefs. You'll begin to see that your energy was never weak. You just gave it away. Every time you question a reaction, observe a thought, or pause before falling into an old pattern, you're taking your energy back. You're breaking unconscious chains. You're stepping out of illusion and into presence. And this kind of presence is unshakable. No amount of noise from the outside world can touch someone who has turned inward and made peace with themselves. You no longer seek validation from others because you found your truth within. Spiritual awakening is not a one-time event. It's a daily practice of remembering who you are beneath the conditioning, the trauma, the noise. It's a quiet returning to your core, again and again. And each time you return, you find that you're less reactive, more grounded, and less concerned with external approval. That's when nobody and nothing can truly affect you, because your energy is rooted in awareness, not ego. As you continue walking this path, you realize you don't need to fight the system. You simply no longer belong to it. You observe, you discern, but you don't attach. And this detachment is not apathy, it's clarity. You see things for what they are. You respond, not react. You choose your energy, your thoughts, your alignment. That is spiritual wisdom in action. That is freedom. If this message helped you see through the illusion, leave a like, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss powerful truths like this. Comment below. I choose to wake up and reclaim my power. 10. Awakening is ongoing and collective. Spiritual awakening is not a single life-altering moment. It is a continuous process of unlearning, shedding false layers, and returning to the core of who you truly are. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And that's exactly what happens when you begin to awaken. You stop moving through life blindly, no longer reacting from old patterns or inherited beliefs. You start paying attention, really paying attention to your emotions, your triggers, your desires. What once seemed normal begins to feel heavy, inauthentic. You begin to sense that the life you've been living was never fully yours. As more individuals step into this awareness, a collective shift begins to stir. You are not the only one pulling back the veil. There's a silent revolution taking place, a spiritual rising not broadcasted through headlines, but through healing hearts. Every time someone chooses authenticity over people-pleasing, presence over distraction, truth over comfort, they contribute to this great awakening. And though it may feel isolating at times, you are far from alone. The courage you show by being true to yourself lights the path for others who haven't found their voice yet. Your energy, your healing, your choices, they ripple outward. Carl Jung reminded us, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens." This is the essence of what you're living through now. It's not about fixing yourself because you're broken. It's about remembering that you were whole before the world convinced you otherwise. Awakening invites you to reclaim that wholeness. And as you do, the way you interact with life changes. You no longer chase validation or bend your truth to avoid discomfort. You learn to let go of needing others to understand your path. What matters more is that you understand it. What once triggered you begins to dissolve because you now see it for what it is, an invitation to heal, not a reason to react. A woman I know walked away from a corporate job that drained her soul. Everyone called her reckless, but what they couldn't see was that she was answering a call that came from somewhere deep within. In leaving, she didn't just find herself, she found a new circle of people who were also waking up, also choosing alignment over security, purpose over applause. Her journey gave others permission to do the same. And that's what happens when we follow our inner truth. It spreads, not through preaching, but through embodiment. The more you awaken, the more you realize this isn't just about you. It's about healing ancestral patterns, challenging cultural conditioning, and choosing consciousness in a world that thrives on distraction. You become aware of how your energy affects others, how your presence uplifts or agitates depending on how rooted you are in yourself. Carl Jung taught that what you resist not only persists, but will grow in size. When you stop resisting your calling, your sensitivity, your need for solitude, you stop suffering. You become grounded, clear, peaceful, unshakable. This is what it means to awaken. Not just to see the truth, but to live it. Even when it's inconvenient. Even when it's lonely. Even when the old version of you tries to pull you back into what's familiar. You keep choosing yourself. And in doing so, you help shift the world. To affirm your place in this shared awakening, declare your presence on the path. Comment below, "I rise with the collective," to honor your journey and inspire others to awaken alongside you. As you step back into the world, keep the core lesson close. The only force that can touch your energy is the one you allow inside. If this exploration lit a spark within you, let it shine. Hit like, share this video with a friend who's ready to stand unshaken, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Don't forget to ring the notification bell so you'll be the first to receive our next deep dive into Carl Jung's insights and the art of true inner mastery. Until we meet again, stay centered, stay sovereign, and remember, when your spirit is rooted, nothing and nobody can sway your light.